Welcome to the team approach to component integration. My name is Amanda Evans. I have been at NCFL for just over 6 months now. I primarily work with the FACE program, Family and Child Education. I do professional development with the staff members and also any technical assistance that are needed. Previously, I worked for Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy Charter School, where I was a co-coordinator and facilitator for family learning. So I'm excited for everyone to be here today, and we are very fortunate to be joined by Tracy Knowles. I'll go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Knowles. I'm a director here at the National Center for Families Learning. Before my going on 3 years here now at the center, I had a long partnership with NCFL as a former family literacy program coordinator. So I'm very passionate about component integration, and I look forward to the conversation today.
Yes, and speaking of conversation, if you have any questions or comments as we're going along, please be sure to type them in your comment box. And let's get on to who we are. So NCFL is a, national organization, and we work to eradicate poverty through education solutions for families. I'm sure most of you are familiar with us, but for those of you who are joining us for the first time today, we work with programs across the nation to bring families together through family literacy, family learning, and family engagement. The services that we offer include intensive 2-generation solutions or 2-gen programming, again, such as what you are all doing on your sites. We also provide professional development, such as these professional development webinars, and we are proponents and speakers for you out in the world. We see your work, we talk about your work, and we look forward to hearing more from you about what you do.
So before we can talk about component integration, we really have to sort of do a quick overview of the ingredients of the programming that we're speaking about. We want to talk about both the components of family literacy and family learning. Parent time is the key adult component of both of those, and parent time is a regularly scheduled, very intentionally planned time for parents to begin to learn the skills they need to be their child's first and most important teacher. PACT time, of course, is parent and child together time. It's the time where parents can learn the skills from parent time and use them in PACT time with their own child. Again, a regularly scheduled time for parents and children to learn together, both at home, at school, and in the community. Family service learning is part of our family learning model, and it's a very intentional 6-step process that families go through together to address community challenges. And we'll talk more about that throughout the time that we have here today. Adult skill building obviously speaks for itself. It's the goals that our adults set for themselves, and then the programming that we provide to help them make that happen. Children's education looks very different depending on your organization, but basically it's K-12, it's early childhood, and beyond.
So today, again, we are looking at component integration, taking all of the pieces of the puzzle and bringing them together to form a whole. So when we're looking at integration, how do we define integration? Integration is an act or instance of combining parts into the integral whole.
So when you think about that through the eyes of the cornerstones of our programming, you're really looking at what makes sense to naturally connect to one another. Family service learning is one component that lends itself really nicely to do that within the 4 cornerstones of family literacy. But in adult education, for example, you're thinking about what academic and employability skills do parents need, and how can we look at those reflected in parent education, in PACT time, and even in children's education. Likewise, what skills do children need, and how can we make sure that those are addressed through all of the cornerstones of the program?
So what does integration look like? Integration should be based on family goals. What is it that your families are looking to achieve for themselves as well as for their community? It's a great idea to focus on strength-based programming as opposed to deficit programming. Each of our families comes in with skills that they can share, and they also come in with the attitude and the mindset that they can learn from others. So again, looking at those strengths-based is incredibly important. It's also important to have intentional connections between the components. And this is primarily what we're going to be spending the rest of our time talking about today. How do we take those different pieces, the parts from four-component family literacy, as well as the parts from family learning and family engagement? How do we bring those together so that you're having one cohesive model and one cohesive program? The great news is modeling is customizable to each site. If there are components that work and that you have at your site, keep them. For example, if you're a family learning site and you do not have adult education, it's all right to leave that specific portion out. It will be covered under family learning. It will be covered under family service learning specifically, is where you can get a lot of those adult skill buildings built into your programming.
So how do we get there? One of the things that I've experienced personally in my own programs that I've worked in throughout the years, and then now that I'm fortunate enough to get to experience when I provide technical assistance, is that you can tell pretty quickly when a program has clear messages throughout all of the components. So it all begins at the core and establishing those core messages. One thing that we suggest is to really, as a staff, think about how you feel about your families and make sure the language that you use reflects that. So again, as Amanda said, coming based from a strengths-based perspective where you honor the amazing strengths that our parents bring into the program. So starting with those core messages and developing those with your staff, but also with your families jointly, so that you know in all components what that message is and what you believe you want for your families at the end of the program year. So who is part of that recipe? You have to determine your stakeholders within the community. And so that could be your local business association, that could be the YMCA, that could be the school board. Again, it depends on where your program is, but really thinking about who needs to know about your program in the community and what core message do you want to send those stakeholders about what your program does for the community. Defining roles, and we'll talk about this a little more in depth later, but defining roles on what everyone does within the components helps from the beginning. Seeking those partnerships also is critical, and some of those partnerships are the ones that we all think about on the surface, but sometimes you never know where an incredible opportunity might exist. So this is where we as educators or as community organization staff have to come and become marketing experts, and we have to really be able to tell our story, and that all is provided by having a strong core message to share. Also measuring, of course, outcomes, and some of those are formal outcomes, but some of those may also be informal outcomes. And again, this is where family input is critical. What do families want to see change in their lives by the end of the program year? And finally, and this is critical, as you know, revisit regularly for continuous improvement. Don't get comfortable in your excellence.
And also, I just wanted to add a little comment here. When you're seeking out partnerships, remember to bring those family stories with you. We all know that we're documenting as we're going. Share those photos with your community partners. Share those stories and let them see the great work that you're doing.
One other just quick thing that I would add too, Amanda, it's always interesting to me, and I've felt this personally in my own program in the past. When you think about those stakeholders, think about people like school receptionists, like the custodian, like the local restaurant on the way to your program. Those are the people that can become your spokespersons as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to establishing core messages. So again, going back to what we were just talking about on the previous slides, having that shared belief, having the story ready to go with how you're going to share that message. the common message between the components, looking at each of the components and seeing how it's impacting each family. How is adult skill building helping to influence child's early development? How is adult skill building enhancing family service learning within your programming? Looking at that strength base. And again, families and staff being able to feel that message, bringing that emotional component to it really helps to sell the story, and it also helps to gain a lot of support both within the community, the school, and anywhere, honestly.
Also, having staff really be able to speak to all parts of the program. So if you have an early childhood teacher, making sure that that person can speak to the adult education component if you have it, or the family service learning, of course, and having them really be able to explain how their piece of it fits into the bigger picture.
Tracy, that's a good point. I know at the charter school that I used to work at, we used to make a regular meeting every month in order to share out with staff members who were not necessarily a part of the specific programming, but they were there to help support the families along the way, and letting them know what kind of information we were giving and what our core message was that was coming out was very useful to the staff. So do be sure to share all of that, even with people who are not necessarily directly connected with the programming.
And then I would also just add to revisit that sharing, because of course staff changes. I'm thinking specifically in my own experience about case managers for families. So if families, for example, are receiving benefits, it's always great to go to those meetings so that case managers of benefits and TANF and those sorts of things can get to know your program. But unfortunately, that staff changes fairly frequently. So having that meeting, but then also revisiting that throughout the year. So when you think about defining staff and family roles, you think about why do we do what we do? And being able to clarify for staff and for families their roles and their responsibilities. Having program partners, including families, really design the core beliefs of the program, but also the core agreements of the program. And so I know that some programs do contracts, some programs do written partnership agreements, but really making sure you're including families as part of that key role clarification. Again, meeting regularly and setting up those lines of communications, not just with staff, but with families. Surveying families at the beginning and surveying families at even the middle and then end of the year, of course, to make sure that the program is meeting their needs, asking them about what aspects of the program they feel are strengths and what things they'd like to see changed, as well as, of course, staff.
All right, continuing on with determining stakeholders, it's important to conduct needs assessments. What does your program need? What are you looking to have? What is your ultimate goal? What do you want? If you know what you have and you know what you want, you can establish those needs. So for example, if you have a family service learning program going on and the project requires a few more computers than what you currently have on site, what stakeholders, what community partners can help you to build and fill out those aspects of your program? Also, you need to determine who is involved to create deliberate program integration. Is there a specific staff member that is tasked with this job, or is this a team effort? Which I'm sure you've noticed today we're highlighting. It's a team effort. We want to encourage high levels of collaboration, both within the programming, but also within the schools, the districts, and your local community partners as well. You want to create continuity in program for families as well. You can do this by creating clear expectations and setting equal opportunities for the families across the board, across the different components.
Thinking about continuity, several of the sites that I'm currently working with have parent leadership opportunities after the parents actually graduate from that program year. So really thinking about whether there are ways that you can provide follow-up after families leave the program to continue their growth. I'm thinking specifically, and I'll mention them, I just got back from a site visit with them. Public Education Foundation in Las Vegas has really worked hard to come up with a parent leadership program where the class actually determines which parent will become a parent leader for the next program year. And so they've actually been able to secure some grant fundings to provide stipends for those particular parents. And then they're actually working towards some programming and some curriculum that will support those particular parents' further leadership development.
Yeah, I've also been to a few sites too where former graduates who have gotten a job based off of some of the skills that they learned while they were in their programming would come back as experts, guest experts, and help either teach a portion of the adult learning component along with the teacher, or they would come in and do a special parent time on, for example, how to fill out a resume or just a special skill building. So it's great to harken back to those families who have graduated.
In order to be able to help program continuity with families as they are entering and exiting the program, you have to really hone in on what the family goals are. And so a great way to do this is to facilitate right at the beginning of the program year or the cohort year goal setting activities. And so having families determining goals up front and revisiting those goals and revising those goals throughout the year. As they meet some of those goals or as they choose to change some of those goals. Just a few quick suggestions, and then we're going to turn it over to some feedback from you all as well and some suggestions. Really thinking about vision boards. So having families, it's a perfect PACT opportunity to have families create vision boards together. Assigning goal partners. So a buddy system, so to speak, where families are mentoring one another and making sure they're accountable for their goals. I certainly need that. So, having a stair-step method where you're visually showing the smaller steps that families achieve along the way to a larger goal. And I think that's really important when we think about adult education and adult skill building. So many of our parents want to learn English tomorrow, or they want to earn a high school equivalency a diploma tomorrow. And of course, it takes a little longer than that. So it's really breaking down, helping them break down their larger goals into very smaller pieces so they can see and feel success along the way.
All right, and now it is your turn. We would love to hear from you guys. You can either type your answers into the question box or the chat area that's on your screen. It should be on the little dashboard that you have. That's also where your mic is located. If you would like to speak, please raise the cute little hand that's there, and I will gladly unmute your mic, and you're welcome to share your thoughts. Please remember that once you have been unmuted, you need to re-mute yourself when you're done talking. We've heard some very fun and interesting announcements about school lunches before, some upcoming fire drills, and we would just like to make sure that, again, you are muted when you are done. All right, so here is our first question. How does your program successfully integrate the components? So again, looking at the components, whether it's 4-component family literacy or if you're using family learning, how are you integrating those components into your programming? While you're typing, Tracy and I are going to share some of our thoughts. So I'll start off. So how did my program successfully integrate the 4 components of, we had family, I don't think I explained this. I was a Toyota family learning grantee. We had family mentoring, family service learning. We also had parent time and PACT time. The way that we integrated those components was we actually created a little lesson plan to make sure that what we were doing for family service learning was kind of for us the centerpiece. Parent time became how are we reaching out to community partners? How are we teaching our parents the skills that they need in order to successfully complete family service learning projects? PACT time became how are we getting the children involved in those specific projects? And family mentoring became an opportunity between parents to share the skills that they have and that they wanted to teach others. So that was how we integrated some components. Tracy, what have you seen out in the field?
So I have seen really amazing ways that families are looking at building employability skills, building adult skills, and then of course building children's skills throughout the components. we'll give everyone just a second to kind of gather your thoughts, but we would love to hear from you. One of the things that we get the pleasure of doing is sharing what we learn from other places, and we have some examples here specifically from current programs that we're going to share with you today. But I think the information that you can share with each other is invaluable, so you can learn from each other. So we'll give you just a second to think about how your program is integrating your components. And then also, if you would, just provide as part of that just a brief description of your work and of your program.
And again, you can either type that in or raise your hand and we will unmute you. All right, well, this is a shy group. So we are, oh, I see a hand up, Miss Angelique. I'm going to unmute you. Feel free to start talking when you're ready. All right, Angelique, you are unmuted. Angelique, it seems that there's a problem with your microphone. If you wouldn't mind, would you type in what your thought was, and I will gladly read that out loud for everyone to hear. All right, we did have one comment just come in. So answering the question, how does your program successfully integrate components? This individual said that within their programming, they've been working on a weaving project. So during the math component of their adult literacy program, they've been going over the different formulas and geometric shapes as well for the lower level students, those beginning students, and looking at how the math is done. They said also that, let's see, that the parents wrote up a small piece about what they were weaving and why they were weaving it, like what the symbols meant to them as they were bringing it together. They then asked the children to comment on it during PACT time. So if a child went over to a station where they could work with beads or with weaving, the parent was able to ask them questions about it. And that was from one of our attendees. Let's see who else has an answer to how does your program succeed in integrating the components. Also, let's be thinking about what are the challenges that you might be facing in your programming, and do you have a balanced approach to the 4 components, or do you tend to weigh on one a little bit more heavily? Again, that's dependent on your programming. Some programs may have a little bit higher portion in adult education, for example, or PACT time. So again, think about those questions and please respond. Thank you.
That question, one of the things that I've noticed, my work was with an adult education program, and so we really had to be very intentional in not having our scale unbalanced towards really parent time and family service learning activities, you know, and then really making sure that we were including our early childhood staff. So I do think it makes a big difference on where you actually have your programming and what your organization's primary mission is.
Mm-hmm.
Patricia, we see that you have a comment. We're going to unmute you, and if you could just also introduce yourself quickly.
Hello, everyone. This is Patricia Lovett. I'm a team leader for family learning here at the National Center for Families Learning. And I get the joy of coming to see programs all over the country. And I just wanted to share an example that I've seen really work well for helping to sync up integration among program components. Because I think especially in programs where staff members may not all be in the same location all day or see each other as regularly as they would like, sometimes really creating a system that can support that integration is important. And one strong way that I've seen this happen was in working with San Mateo County Libraries, a Toyota Family Learning partner. They really worked hard to sync up not only within individual program sites component integration, but also doing that across their two locations, which were several miles apart. And the way that they set this up as a system was, for one, having a timeline to create each week's materials so that everything was created at least a week ahead of time. A lot of this work was done through using Google Suite, which was really nice for me because I was able to see everything they contributed as they did that, even though I'm sitting in Kentucky and they're in California. And it was very helpful because everyone was very intentionally putting out what they thought would contribute best to the overall content of a week's programming in one place, so that you had children's programming communicating with the adult educators, thinking about parent time, and then looking overall, how does this relate into what we're doing with family service learning? And having that system in place, I think, was really helpful for them to make sure that they were able to balance the components well, and to make sure that they were able to address things in a very systematic way. A lot of times, life gets very busy, and it's easy not to create those systems. But among programs that really successfully pull off program integration, a lot of times it really comes down to, and this is why this is today's topic, to having that team approach and a system in place that supports it and that helps people to give feedback. Using a cloud-based resource like Google is helpful for that, just because that feedback can happen in real time. So you don't have to email someone, wait for a response to come back, update a document, re-upload it, email it back out to everyone. It's a lot easier to collaborate and really work as a team in that environment.
Thank you, Patricia. You talked a little bit about Google Suite, and one thing that I wanted to mention, there is a free resource that Google provides called Applied Digital Skills, and they are really wanting to get the word out about this resource. It is a wonderful resource to help with project planning. It has lessons that help adults learn to do that. And so I just wanted to mention that really quickly. It's called Google Applied Digital Skills, and I'll be glad to email that link to everyone. But again, it kind of prepares parents for using Google Suite in order to be able to plan projects in the way that Patricia just described. Again, with both staff and families. Before we move on, is there any challenges? Do you face any challenges when you try to integrate all of the components? We have, I'm going to read. So, Angelique, I'm sorry we're unable to get you on speaker, but I'm going to read your comment. So, the parents integrated their family service learning project with related activities in the classroom. For example, the children made flags to tie in with their family service learning project theme of cultural awareness. And that is a perfect example of really making sure that the goals for the children are incorporated into a family service learning project. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I found in my program was we did sometimes have challenges around component integration. Patricia talked about people being at different locations, different places, and often different organizations. And so one of the challenges that I faced and that I struggled with sometimes was just making sure, again, that those messages were clear across all components. And so we were able to do that through again, those core messages, spending quite a bit of time at the beginning of the program year, really developing those core messages. Before we move on, any other challenges that you specifically address, and how do you address them when it comes to integrating the components of 2-generation or 3 or 4-generation programming? I'm going to give everybody just a second.
All right.
Oh, we got one more. The parents integrated their family service learning project with related activities in the classroom. For example, the children made flags. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a duplicate. I'm so sorry. Thank you again, Angelique. Okay, so what we're going to do then is share some examples that we see, and we hope through these examples that you'll be able to learn from them and then also be able to share your own. Parent time, when you think about the goals of parent time, you think about how do we best support families to be the best parents that they can be. And so, of course, we do that through making sure they understand the academic goals of their children, the academic languages of the school, and then also the child development stages for younger children to make sure their kids are prepared for school, ready for kindergarten, and then on a pathway towards a great career or post-secondary education. So these are 2 examples of recent visits that we've had for parent time. One was parent time and one was a family service learning planning and preparation stage inside of parent time. The picture on the left with the group of adults around crock pots. So this was a parent time based on health and nutrition. And this particular parent time was conducted by a local nonprofit that provided community gardens. And let's see, this one was in Las Vegas. And so these are parents that are learning about nutrition, and they have received, as part of this guest speaker's presentation, crock pots in order to use recipes. But what the teachers are able to do as part of this lesson is they're able to look at those recipes and really hone in on the skills needed to cook. And so the fractions involved, of course, the measurements involved, and really talking about how they can involve children when they go home to actually use these crock pots. And so, again, just a really simple way that they're incorporating their children's goals into parent time. The picture on the right is a picture from Plano, Texas, from the Plano Independent School District Family Literacy Program. And in this picture, again, they were working recently on health and nutrition, but they're doing it inside of a family service learning project. And so as part of their project, these families that you see, these parents that you see, are going through a train the trainer workshop on nutrition. what they're going to do in turn is they're going to turn around and give this training to the other moms at the elementary school where they meet for classes. So again, parent time, but incorporating not just the information that they'll have to learn, but public speaking skills, organizational skills, and the ability to schedule further meetings with other parents in the school. So again, a nice simple way to seamlessly incorporate employability skills within parent time and within family service learning. Before we go on, just really quickly, any examples of parent time, of the kinds, how do you incorporate children's goals into parent time programming? And again, we'll give you a second to either type or think about that.
All right, so now we're going to take a quick look at PACT Time. PACT Time, again, stands for Parent and Child Together Time. And it's an opportunity for families to work together, either towards building a specific skill, but always taking the child's lead. So on the left picture, we see a family that's working together, building computer skills. So the child on here, it looks like, is the expert and is teaching their mother how to use a specific function on the computer.
This particular site, this is the Family Resource Center of Northern Mississippi in Tupelo, Mississippi, and this was a vocabulary PACT time, and they began the lesson by talking about how to expand vocabulary in parent time, and then they began the lesson in PACT time on looking at ways to do that both with young children and with elementary school children, which you see here. They are actually, and it's hard to tell in the picture, but they are actually looking up fruits and vegetables, but these are fruits and vegetables that are a little bit rare. And so I think he may have a star fruit, but I can't swear to it. It's in his hand. But they are actually looking at ways to describe through all senses those fruits and vegetables. And then families are actually looking up facts about those vegetables, and families together did presentations to the rest of the class. So again, it's a way for parents and children to work together. And Amanda, you're exactly right. The child is leading this activity. And it's a great way to incorporate vocabulary instruction while also incorporating digital literacy.
And just as a side note, do remember that our littlest learners are some of the greatest experts we have on technology. So if they have the opportunity to voice and create a PACT time activity for their parents where they're teaching them some of those 21st century digital literacy skills, please go with it, because one, it's fun to watch, and two, it's a great experience for everyone involved.
The picture on the right, this was again in Plano, Texas, and this is a school age PACT night. And this is a mom working with her 2 young children on games that can be played easily while you're waiting somewhere. So they were doing some very simple games. This one was 10 dots. So it's just 10 dots on a piece of paper, and you can mark out 1 or 2 dots, and whoever has the last dot standing is the winner. So again, a very simple idea, but the next day in the adult skill building class, the instructor took that one step further and had the parents look at patterns, which led to an algebra lesson. So again, it was taking a very simple idea for families to put those phones down in the doctor's offices or at waiting for food at the restaurant and play some sequencing and some patterning games, but then taking that one step further in adult education or adult skill building and really looking at patterning and how that applies to algebra. And again, we want to stop really quickly and give you an opportunity to share what kinds of things are you doing in PACT Time to make sure your components all naturally connect with one another. So again, we'll move forward, but please, please don't be shy. We would love to hear your thoughts so that others on the webinar can learn from you. And we're seeing some long-term Toyota continuing partners with us today. So please, please share your experience and your wealth of knowledge because again, we're all learning from each other.
Mm-hmm. All right, so our next bit of information, our next component to review is family service learning. As we all know, there are the 6 steps. First, beginning with investigation, then planning and preparation, followed by our action. Then, of course, we need a little bit of time to think about it and reflect. Then comes our demonstration and celebration, and finally, looking at the sustainability of the family service learning projects. So here we've got several engaging photos showing some different projects that are happening across the country. Look at the top middle picture. This one comes from a uniform recycling. There was a bit of problem solving that had to be addressed here. Some of the parents had outlined a schedule for running this uniform recycling area, business, if you will. One of the mothers, unfortunately, couldn't maintain her time commitment, so the group had to work together to problem solve and figure out how that individual could contribute to the project. Together, they came to a solution of that particular parent would wash the uniforms. So she was still able to contribute, however, on a different type of a schedule. She had several jobs, so this worked out well for her. Working through these problem-solving skills actually enhances a lot of employability skills, being able to come together, negotiate, mediate, think through different solutions, and then employing those different solutions.
And I would just add that also really being able to call those skills out. Many times families are addressing those skills, practicing those skills, and they may not realize it. So we talk sometimes in pretty lofty terms about employability skills and higher order thinking skills and collaboration, but really making sure that families understand what that means. And so for that particular project, the parent facilitator took time to stop after they had solved this problem and kind of give them a hand and say, you know, you all, this is an important employability skill that employers say are lacking, and you all have just done a fantastic job of contributing with each other and showing how you've mastered that skill. So really being able to name that skill for parents so they understand what they look like.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not aware, NCFL does have a wonderful resource online, the Learn to Earn Toolkit, where your families can go on, create accounts, and learn some of that terminology so they can begin using it themselves as well.
The picture on the far right is a wonderful example of a family that is working together to make blankets for the homeless. But as you can see by the picture, they're using math skills to do that. And again, through their parent facilitator, she's calling those skills out so they begin to see the connections between not only what the adult is doing in their adult skill building, but what the children's math standards are as well. And then finally, the picture below with the mural, that again, that mural was completely completed with families, but they had to start with a model. So there was modeling that needed to take place. They had to do it to scale on a cardboard first. They had to, of course, get all of the donations. And again, that incorporates those key employability skills in order to do that. And then the picture on the far left, again, this is creating welcome bags for newly arrived refugee families. The folks creating these are newly arrived refugee families. So again, and you can see they're involving the children, they're involving the skills that the children need with fine motor development as part of that project. So simple things that you can do to make sure all components are just speaking naturally to one another. And again, Angelique, you had great feedback about what you're doing with your family service learning projects. Would anyone else like to share? Or if you want more information about family service learning, you can ask any questions as well.
All right, our next piece is with children's education. So we're looking at, again, some very artistic and beautiful drawings on the left here, some of that noodle art. Children learned that, you know, you have to cook those noodles. They don't just appear sometimes. It also looks like they're doing some counting, so math is being addressed with these students. And again, this is a PACT Time activity that's taking the child's educational component and integrating and weaving them in together.
The picture on the right is again having families do a storyboard. We talked a little bit about vision boards for family goals, and it's just making sure to involve the entire family when we're thinking about those goals.
And we love the big book that's in the back center of that picture. Always bring the books. All right, next up we have adult skill building. Picture on the left is this. I'm actually asking Tracy because I'm not sure. Is that a family service learning project?
That is. Yep.
Ooh, tell me about it.
Actually, we may have some folks on the webinar that may be able to do a better job of that than I can. But this is a project in New York that it's a community garden. But again, it's thinking about all of the skills that you need, especially across content areas with science, with literacy, with math, on creating, cultivating, and then using the produce from a community garden. The picture on the right, again, this is an example of a marble run. This is actually a PACT Time activity that adults are having quite a good time doing. And so it's just looking at how you can incorporate science into adult skill building, but also into children's programming. And this was these are actually staff from a community organization that is looking and doing the family learning model here in Louisville, Kentucky.
And I just wanted to add gardening projects for family service learning, for adult skill building. Those are all wonderful projects to embark on. Reason being is a lot of our programming that we have here at the National Center for Families Learning, they're located in food deserts. So helping bring that nutritional component is, it's a community service. But additionally, there's also a lot going on around health literacy that can be addressed during a gardening project.
Oh, so Kenya is on the line, and she is saying that this is a picture of her doing activity that led to the family service learning project. Kenya, we're going to unmute you, and we would love for you to explain the project.
All right, Kenya, you are unmuted. Go ahead whenever you're ready. All right, sorry, Kenya. We seem to be having some technical difficulties with the unmuting and muting of microphones right now. So if there's anything you would like to add to your previous comment, please type it in the box and we will gladly share that out with the rest of the group.
We'll give you a second to do that. And again, we apologize. I don't know if it's on our end, but we're not hearing you. Kenya, yes, there is a number you can call. We'll try to get that for you.
Alrighty, and while Tracy's getting that number for Kenya, we're going to move on real quickly to measuring outcomes. So the very first thing we have listed here is measure what you treasure. All right, there's a value in what we're all doing and what our families are doing, so please be sure to document it. This can be through, quantitative, looking at it numerically, but it can also be done with, again, those photos that we had mentioned before, using Padlet to help post those photos for people to look at and to comment on, using Facebook to create Facebook Facebook pages in order for families to be able to go onto the photo albums and make comments of the photos and kind of see what they've been doing and celebrating together. The other piece of measuring outcomes is we want to remember to begin with the end in mind, right? We know where we are, we know where we want to end up, so we need to be sure to map out and look at that road that we're going to be traveling. How are we going to get there? The way that we create that roadmap is to use data. So again, this can be surveys, it can be the anecdotal data that you're collecting from your families, but looking at what types of data you can use to drive program decisions. And also, finally, sharing the successes that you guys are experiencing. These measurable outcomes are going to show some challenges, but they are also going to show the successes. And I know sometimes we all get wrapped up and we're so much in the middle of what we're doing that we forget to take a breath, step back, and just celebrate the time and the accomplishments that we've all made together. Be sure to take some time during parent time and share this information with your families. Your parents are very interested in knowing how is this helping them. If you have that data to share with them, please do share it. But taking those moments and celebrating them. Also, bring the kids in, celebrate together.
Also, when we look at continuous improvement, reconvening throughout the year, but doing that with a purpose. I think that team planning is so critical, but we get sort of stuck sometimes in a rut of just checking the team planning box. Make sure you're meeting, but meeting with a purpose, and you're continually going back to those core program messages to make sure that you're meeting those core needs of both your program and, of course, your families. Revisiting that regularly throughout the year and then reflecting. We have the privilege of working with amazing partners that do just phenomenal work. I'm just always amazed in the field. But again, it's not, you don't want to settle into your excellence. And so you want to constantly reflect and revise and think about new ways to meet families.
All right, and Kenya has just sent us a very nice response. So I'm going to pull this out so I can read it to her nice and clearly. All right, Kenya has said, and this is again in reference to adult skill building and that picture that we saw. So I'm actually going to see if I can get back to that slide real quick. Here we go. All right, so Kenya says, the parents decided to create a community garden at 2 different sites. We visited a rooftop garden in Brooklyn, met with an herbalist, and toured community gardens. We connected to PACT Time by ordering gardening books for the classrooms and starting seeds in the classrooms. On the day of the event, the children and parents joined classmates for a planting party. She said she thinks there's some pictures located on a Padlet. So Kenya, if you have that Padlet, would you send us the link for it? Because we would love to see that.
And thank you so much for sharing that, because yes, you're certainly doing a much better job than we did of the project overview, but it's a wonderful way to connect all of those components. And sometimes I think it's easy to get into the mindset that we need to have a theme. You need to have a theme. But you need to make sure that it's deeper than just a theme. You need to make sure that all of it makes sense through the different components, and that everybody again knows the purpose of why, and you can tell through this project that they do. Why are the kids learning about gardening? Why are the adults learning about gardening? And how will that ultimately impact both of their skill building throughout the program.
And of course, as always, it's important that those ideas are coming from them. What are the family goals? What are the children's goals? What are the adults' goals? So keeping that always in mind as well.
And so much of it, I think, is a process. It's really putting emphasis on the process and not the product.
Yeah.
I know that when I first began in family literacy, I got kind of stuck on thinking that it was a product, that PACT Time had to end with a nice art project, or it had to end with something that they could take home. But it's really looking at, of course, the bigger picture as they are doing in this project, and really thinking about how all of that fits together in that process, instead of necessarily the greens that they're taking home, although that's really fantastic too.
Yeah, I think we could go on all day about that one. Be sure to join us in other webinars to hear more conversation about that. We only have 5 minutes left, so we don't want to spend all the time on that one. All right, so I'm just moving the slides back towards our end, because here we are on our last slide. And we just want to wish you all happy integration with your components. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. The very last slide will have our contact information on it. Also, if you have any links that you would like to share, please send them with us. We can always send those on to other participants. But yeah, happy integrating to you.
And I will go ahead, I will share the applied digital skills. Like I said, it's a brand new resource from Google, and it might be something that you'd be interested in taking a look at, again, for adult skill building. It can also be used with middle schoolers, and it would lend itself really nicely to family service learning.
All right, and just as a final reminder, I'm sure you've seen it, but you know we want you to come. So be sure to join us here at the National Center for Families Learning Conference on September 24th through September 26th in beautiful, sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Can you tell I'm excited? Of course, if you register before July 1st, you'll get that early bird special, and you can find all of this information on conference.familieslearning.org.
Including the newly released Toyota Teacher of the Year nomination application. So if you have a Toyota Teacher of the Year in your program, please don't hesitate to nominate them. That will end, I believe, in June. So get those nominations in.
All right. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Any final questions or any final comments? All right, thank you so much, and thank you, Kenya and Angelique, for sharing with us.
All right, everyone. Next time we'll catch you. Bye.